It starts not with a launch, but with a landing. A 15-story building made of thin metal filled with explosive fuel. It's falling from the edge of space, moving faster than a bullet. And it's supposed to stop, not crash, not break apart, but land, perfectly, upright, on a robotic barge the size of a suburban backyard, floating in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It sounds like science fiction. It was science fiction. Until it wasn't. On December 21, 2015, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket did just that. It launched its payload into orbit, turned around, and came home. That single silent beep from a drone ship called "Just Read the Instructions" wasn't just a success. It was a detonation. An economic detonation that shattered the cost of reaching orbit. Before that day, spaceflight operated on a brutal, accepted logic, a philosophy of destruction. For 60 years, the common knowledge was that rockets were single-use items. They were meant to burn once and die. For decades, that waste was treated as normal. Every rocket, a masterpiece of engineering costing hundreds of millions of dollars, was used once. Think of it like building a brand new 747, flying it from New York to London, and then ditching it in the Atlantic after a single trip. It was the only way we knew, and it made space the exclusive playground of superpowers. The numbers are staggering. Since 2010, the cost to launch a pound to orbit has plummeted by roughly 90%. This wasn't just an engineering upgrade. It was a key, turning in a lock that had held the door to the cosmos shut for half a century. And the moment it clicked open, a flood of new possibilities poured out. Private companies, universities, even startups can now buy their way into orbit. Scientists who could dream bigger. Mega-constellations like Starlink. Tens of thousands of satellites blanketing Earth with internet wouldn't exist without this revolution. And mega-projects, once confined to PowerPoint presentations, that suddenly became terrifyingly, thrillingly possible. What was once the exclusive playground of superpowers has become a bustling marketplace, with launches as frequent as airline flights. We are living in the aftershock of that landing. This chapter isn't history. It is the active, unfolding present. And everything that follows, the promises, the perils, the new sky being woven above our heads, stems from this single, simple, revolutionary idea: that a rocket should come home. But to understand just how profound this shift is, we need to go back to a time when going to space meant burning money. The roar of the Saturn V rocket was the sound of a nation proving a point. It was a controlled explosion of pure political will, lifting not just astronauts, but the hopes of an entire country. For the generations that watched Apollo, spaceflight was synonymous with national pride. It was a majestic, almost mythical endeavor. But behind the glory and the flag planting, there was a brutal, hidden economic truth. In the Cold War era, rockets weren't vehicles. They were statements. Every launch was a chest-thumping exercise between the US and the Soviet Union, and every one of them ended the same way, with billion-dollar hardware raining into the ocean. Saturn V, Soyuz, the space shuttle's giant fuel tanks. They were single-use monuments to a brutal truth. Space was for governments, not for people. This was the era of the disposable rocket. The fundamental design was a one-way ticket. Every component, from the smallest bolt to the massive engines themselves, was built with a single fiery purpose: to be used once. After fulfilling its duty, the empty husk of a multi-hundred-million-dollar vehicle was discarded, left to burn up in the atmosphere or sink to the bottom of the ocean. To understand the sheer absurdity of this, let's strip away the romance. Imagine constructing a magnificent suspension bridge, a marvel of engineering that took years and billions of dollars to build. Now, Imagine that after the very first convoy of cars crossed it, you demolished the entire structure. And then you did it again, and again, every time anyone needed to get to the other side. That was the economics of spaceflight for decades. The cost was astronomical by necessity. It made every mission a high-stakes, all-or-nothing gamble. There were no second chances, no practice runs a company could afford. This reality dictated a cautious, glacial pace of progress. The price tag was obscene. In the Apollo era, it cost the United States roughly $150 million per launch, in 1960s dollars. Adjusted for today, that's over $1 billion every time just to throw something into orbit. NASA was spending nearly 5% of the entire federal budget during its peak. Think about that. 1 in every 20 tax dollars went into fire and smoke just to prove we could touch the moon. And it wasn't just money. The technology itself was fragile and unforgiving. Rockets failed. Satellites exploded. Probes missed their targets and drifted forever into the void. Every launch was a gamble, and when things went wrong, they went wrong spectacularly, with fireballs that lit up the Florida coast or Siberian skies. The consequence was a simple, stark division of the world. Access to space was a luxury only the richest governments could afford. The United States and the Soviet Union held the keys. Later, a handful of other nations joined the club, but the door remained firmly shut to private enterprise. Space wasn't a frontier, it was a classified destination. The idea of a company simply buying a launch to test a new satellite, or even more fancifully, to start a business, was laughable. The price tag was a fortress wall. And that's the world SpaceX inherited when it was founded in 2002. A stagnant industry, decades past its glory days, with costs so high it looked more like a luxury yacht club than a frontier of exploration. This system created a paradox. While humanity had taken its first steps into the cosmos, we had effectively built a moat around it. The very thing that promised to open the universe, rocket science, had become one of the most exclusive, impenetrable fields in human history. The sky was open, but the door to reach it was locked. And for a long time, we accepted that this was just the way it had to be. That acceptance was the very wall the reusable revolution would tear down. When Elon Musk announced in 2002 that he wanted to start a rocket company, the aerospace world laughed. Literally. The phrase, "rich guy hobby," was thrown around more than once. Space was not Silicon Valley. Space was brutal, expensive, and usually ended with fireballs. And fireballs are exactly what Musk got at first. SpaceX's first 3 launches of the Falcon 1 ended in catastrophic failure. Engines blew up, rockets fell into the ocean. The company was burning money faster than Musk could find it, and by 2008, SpaceX was weeks away from bankruptcy. Then came Flight 4. Against the odds, Falcon 1 made it to orbit. It was a tiny payload, basically a metal dummy, but it proved something revolutionary. A small, private company could put stuff into space. Within weeks, NASA came knocking with a contract worth $1.6 billion for resupply missions to the International Space Station. SpaceX wasn't just saved, it was unleashed. From there, the climb was brutal but relentless. The Falcon 9 became their workhorse. Launch after launch, SpaceX cut costs, streamlined design, and ignored the aerospace establishment telling them they'd fail. In 2015, the impossible happened. A Falcon 9 booster came back and landed upright on solid ground. Months later, one landed on a floating barge in the ocean. That moment, the first controlled reusable rocket landing, wasn't just engineering. It was a paradigm shift. A what-if turned into a look at this. For the first time in history, rockets weren't single-use fireworks. They were vehicles. machines that could fly, land, and fly again. Meanwhile, competitors scrambled. Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, even legacy giants like ULA suddenly realized the ground had shifted under their feet. Musk wasn't just another eccentric billionaire throwing money into the void. He was rewriting the economics of space. And with the price of launch collapsing, the gates opened. Suddenly, private spaceflight wasn't a joke. It was the future. With the price of a ticket to orbit slashed, the floodgates swung open. The same economic forces that once locked space away now demanded it be industrialized. The goal was no longer just to visit the cosmos, but to use it, to weave it into the very fabric of our digital lives. And so, a new vision for near-Earth space began to take shape, not as a void, but as a marketplace. The most ambitious expression of this new era is the Mega-constellation. Think of it as building a second artificial sky, not with a few dozen satellites, but with tens of thousands. Companies like SpaceX, OneWeb, and Amazon are launching fleets of small, mass-produced satellites into low Earth orbit, creating a networked web designed to blanket the planet in high-speed internet. Their argument is powerful. This is how we finally bridge the digital divide. It's a promise of global connectivity, from the most remote village to the mid-ocean shipping lane, all enabled by the cheap, frequent launches the reusable rocket made possible. The scale is almost impossible to visualize. We are talking about adding more active satellites in a single decade than humanity had launched in the previous 60 years combined. Each one is a node in a vast orbital machine. Proponents see this as the natural next step, the construction of critical infrastructure for a connected world. The revenue, they argue, will fund the next great leaps: lunar bases, cities on Mars. It's a virtuous cycle, powered by commerce. For centuries, the night sky was a shared inheritance, silent, eternal, untouched. Then came the satellites. Today, astronomers looking through billion-dollar telescopes often see not stars, but bright white scars across their images, streaks of moving satellites cutting through deep space exposures. Each streak represents lost data, erased science. The faintest galaxies, the kind that tell us about the birth of the universe, can vanish completely behind the glow of low-orbiting satellites. In effect, humanity is vandalizing its own window to the cosmos. For a ground-based astronomer, a single satellite passing through a telescope's field of view is a nuisance. It creates a bright streak that overwrites the faint light from a galaxy billions of light-years away, ruining that particular exposure. But when you have tens of thousands of them, the nuisance becomes a crisis. In a long-exposure image from a powerful telescope like the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which is designed to scan the entire visible sky, it is projected that nearly every single image it takes will contain at least one satellite streak. Some will contain dozens. It's like trying to listen to a symphony while someone runs a lawnmower back and forth through the concert hall. The data is scarred, sometimes irreparably. Surveys designed to track near-Earth asteroids, to understand the nature of dark energy by mapping distant galaxies, or to spot the subtle dimming of a star as an exoplanet passes before it. All are now under threat. The pristine data that astronomers rely on is now at risk of being permanently polluted by the signatures of our own technology. Starlink alone already has over 5,000 satellites in orbit, with approval for tens of thousands more. Add OneWeb, Kuiper, and other players, and suddenly Earth is wrapped in an artificial cocoon. By the 2030s, some projections suggest we could have 100,000 satellites buzzing above us. For the first time in history, the night sky is becoming industrialized. What was once infinite and pristine now carries the fingerprints of commerce. Radio astronomy faces a parallel, invisible crisis. These constellations communicate with the ground using specific radio frequencies. Despite efforts to avoid them, their transmissions can bleed into the reserved, quiet bands that radio astronomers use to listen to the faint whispers of the universe, the birth of stars, the spin of distant pulsars, the echo of the Big Bang itself. The sky, once a silent laboratory, is becoming a noisy place. The nightmare scenario? That our ability to detect the unknown, new physics, new worlds, maybe even extraterrestrial life, could be smothered under a blanket of human interference. The response from the companies has been to work on mitigations, darkening coatings, sunshades, and changing orbital orientations. But these are mitigations, not solutions. They reduce the problem. They do not eliminate it. The hard truth is that we are making a conscious choice. We are trading an unimpeded view of the universe for global broadband. We are accepting that our grandest scientific instruments, built at a cost of billions, will have their vision partially obscured, their data forever tainted. The price of connecting every corner of our world appears to be that we are slowly, streak by streak, erasing the depths of the one beyond. Imagine low Earth orbit as a pristine, high-speed highway. For decades, it was sparsely populated. A few cars, widely spaced, moving at predictable speeds. The risk of a collision was minimal. Now we are in the process of adding tens of thousands of new vehicles to this highway, all traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. At that velocity, an object the size of a paint chip carries the kinetic energy of a hand grenade. A loose bolt hits like a cannonball. And there are no brakes, no traffic lights, no police. Just pure speed and chaos, waiting for one mistake. The nightmare has a name: Kessler syndrome. It's not science fiction. It's the scenario where one collision between satellites creates a cloud of shrapnel, and that shrapnel smashes into other satellites, creating even more debris. A runaway domino effect. In hours, a single accident could turn Earth's orbit into a minefield of razor-sharp metal fragments. The International Space Station already takes evasive maneuvers several times a year to dodge these invisible bullets. Each maneuver costs fuel, and each one reminds us how close we are to disaster. Earth orbit would transform from a highway into a minefield. It would become a swirling shell of high-velocity projectiles, making it too dangerous for satellites, astronauts, or rockets to pass through. The consequence is almost unthinkable. The very orbits we rely on for GPS, weather forecasting, global communications, and national security could be rendered unusable. Access to space, the Moon, Mars, the stars beyond, could be severed for a century or more, until the debris slowly, agonizingly, falls back into the atmosphere and burns up. We would be trapped on Earth, looking up at a cage of our own making. The great promise of the reusable revolution, an open cosmos, would be shattered, not by a lack of ambition, but by a failure to clean up after ourselves. The ultimate irony would be that we didn't lose our access to space in a war or a disaster. We lost it by cluttering our own front door. This is the trap we're building, piece by piece, orbit by orbit. And the clock is ticking. We have arrived at the most profound question spawned by this new space age. It is not an engineering problem, but a philosophical and legal one that cuts to the very core of how we see ourselves as a species. As we busily build this new industrial layer in the heavens, we are forced to ask, who does space belong to? The foundational document for our cosmic ambitions is the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, a product of its Cold War era. Its principles are grand and idealistic. Space is the province of all mankind, not subject to national claims of sovereignty. No nation can own the moon or a planet or declare an orbit its territory. It was designed to prevent a colonial land grab in the cosmos, envisioning a future of peaceful exploration for the benefit of all. But the treaty's architects could never have imagined a future where the primary actors are not nations, but corporations. The treaty says a nation cannot own a celestial body, but it is silent on whether a company can mine its resources. It declares space free for exploration and use by all states, but it doesn't define what use means when that user is a private entity launching tens of thousands of satellites. This legal ambiguity has created a wild frontier. In the absence of clear, updated international rules, national governments have stepped in with their own permissions. The US, for instance, has passed laws granting its companies the right to mine and own asteroid resources. The message is clear. While no one can own the territory, you can own what you extract from it. This has opened the door for corporations to effectively treat space as a commercial domain, a new high frontier for capitalism. And then there is Mars, the Red Prize, the ultimate frontier. Colonization isn't just a dream of exploration. For some, it's insurance, a backup planet in case Earth falls. But ask yourself, if Mars is built by private hands, who will it belong to? A new branch of humanity? Or the shareholders of a company? This leads us to an uncomfortable ethical precipice. If a handful of companies from a few powerful nations secure de facto control of the most valuable orbital pathways and resource-rich celestial bodies, what does that mean for the rest of humanity? Are we creating a cosmic division between the spacefaring haves and the earthbound have-nots? The promise of "for all mankind" risks curdling into "for all who can afford it." We are therefore in a race against time, a race to establish rules of the road before the traffic jam becomes permanent. We need a new framework for the 21st century. How do we manage space traffic to prevent collisions? Who is liable for the debris a private satellite creates? How do we ensure that the economic riches of the solar system do not simply replicate and amplify the inequalities of Earth? The thrill of reaching outward is undeniable. Humanity is standing on the edge of becoming a multi-planetary species. But every step forward raises the same haunting question. Are we expanding into the stars as one humanity, or fracturing into empires of profit and possession? Private spaceflight has already reshaped the rules. Costs fell not because governments planned it, but because one company did what once seemed impossible. Agencies that once ruled the skies now follow in the slipstream of billionaires. The balance of power shifted quietly, not through elections or treaties, but through contracts, launches, and market forces. And here lies the unease. If people can no longer shape the decisions that govern their lives on Earth, what chance will they have when the stakes are even higher, written into the sky itself? The corporations writing the first chapters of space colonization are setting precedents that could last centuries. If the rules are tilted today, they may stay tilted forever. We stand at a blurred horizon where cosmos and commerce merge, where natural and artificial are indistinguishable. Satellites streak across telescope images, orbital lanes crowd, and the heavens are no longer just a stage for wonder. They are becoming infrastructure, property, profit. Humanity is not just observing the universe anymore. We are rewriting it. And if you've made it this far into the story, it means you care about these questions too. So, help me spread them. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up. Because the more voices we bring to this conversation, the harder it becomes for those in power to ignore that the future of the sky should belong to all of us.